You're listening to the Coop Homeschool Podcast.
This is your podcast for community, humility, and joyful fun in homeschooling. I'm Andy.
I'm Jessica.
And this is The Coop. Today we are interviewing a homeschool veteran mom that I have looked up to for like 2 decades.
Yes.
So that's going to be really fun. I'm really excited to share her expertise, and she has so many things to offer us.
Yes.
But first, our scoop on the coop.
It's me. So my husband and I were planning a vacation, and then we kept trying to think of the logistics of what we were going to do this new school year, some epic thing. And then we realized we were using all of our vacation time for when family was coming to us. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have time. And then to do something short and fly and stay in hotels or Airbnbs becomes a much more expensive trip.
Totes.
And we like the time.
Yeah.
So we decided to put off a road trip and instead use that budget towards investing in arts and museums as a family. Mm-hmm. So my husband and I got several tickets to the symphony for the two of us, actually, for the summer. And then we also bought tickets to take Sophia to the symphony's live accompaniment of Harry Potter while they project the movie.
That is so cool.
So I'm very excited about that. They have the symphony here in San Diego has a whole new outdoor venue that I am so excited to go see.
Oh, by the water.
Yeah. It's called the Shell. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited about it. And then
I electric scootered right by it.
And then we are going to do the 2 Shakespeare plays at the Old Globe.
Awesome.
They're doing Taming of the Shrew and Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh, perfect.
And then we also got Natural History Museum passes, so we could be going to that. And then I'm sure we'll think of other things to invest in as we go along.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's going to be so fun.
Seemed like a really great thing, and as our kids get older, we want them to value the arts too. I think it's something that transcends decades, because what do we look back on and see and know and feel from history? We look at architecture, we look at art, we hear music, it's all these creative things. And so if they don't know how to value it, or you've talked about how to learn to have an aesthetic for it, then what are they doing with their lives?
Yeah, well, they're going to miss out on all that.
Right. They can't appreciate it, nor are they going to invest into it or offer it to leave behind in their time.
Yeah.
So that's my scoop.
Love it. Okay, mine is this morning, my 7-year-old, who hasn't been as interested in learning to read, crawled into bed with her Frog and Toad Easy Reader book.
Aww.
And said she wants to read a chapter to me.
Yes.
So for a half an hour, she read 2 chapters.
Beautiful.
And I got to witness her work through every single word.
Yes.
And use her phonics and try words multiple times. And I just got to sit there in my jammies with my arm around her. And it's just precious.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's why I was thinking this is why we homeschool.
Exactly. And this is why you worked so hard to figure out what her path was and how it was different than your other kids. Because I know there was that moment of panic for a little while where you weren't sure what the right approach for that child was.
Right.
And then you settled on what you were going to do, and now look.
Yeah. She's so excited. She's telling me how proud she is of herself.
Yes, exactly.
I love it when kids can say that. It's not me. It's not about me saying I'm proud of you. No. It's them saying, I did this. Yeah.
It's so precious.
Yeah. All right. Let's get back to Kathy.
Okay.
So Kathy and her husband raised their 3 kids here in San Diego for 3 years while my husband was in seminary. I watched her and her children at church and at Sunday school and at church events and in their home. And as a side note, her husband, Kathy's husband, was my husband's professor at seminary in Greek and New Testament.
Love it.
Yeah. Her Kathy's kids are all grown now, college graduates living wonderful lives throughout the country. And presently, Kathy is now in her grandparent years and has been a beautiful source of encouragement and ideas for my parenting and homeschooling life. So I thought it would be helpful to share the wealth of her knowledge and expertise. She has so much wisdom that I want to share it with the world.
Absolutely.
And so we just interviewed her and here it is. So we're so excited to have Kathy here with us. And we have 3 sets of questions for you.
Okay.
The first set is about your experience and journey in homeschooling. The second are advice that you have for homeschoolers. And then the third is any historical knowledge you have of what it was like to homeschool in the 90s and 2000s. So first, let's dive right in and talk about your personal journey. So tell us about you and your personal homeschooling history and journey.
Okay, happy to. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and get this opportunity to talk to you about homeschooling because it was such a significant part of my life and so important to me, and I loved it. And I know later I'm going to mention one teeny tiny little regret, but really I wouldn't have done much differently, and I would do it over again, and I would homeschool my grandkids if I had the opportunity.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I'm very enthusiastic.
That's awesome.
So I homeschooled from 1991 to 2016, and that comes to, do the math, 25 years. I know, I could hardly believe it either. So the way that works out is I began with our oldest daughter at the preschool level, so I'm including preschool years, because I was already reading to her. I was teaching her the alphabet. I was getting library books that coincided with field trips. And there's a preschool program for you right there, just doing those three things. And she was flourishing. So I include those years, and then through 2016 includes the high school years of our third and last child. And that's even though we did use some Palomar Community College classes. I still count those in my homeschooling journey. Now, at our time, we didn't have charter schools, and we may have had independent study, but it was probably for kids with IEPs, that is, who had been diagnosed as having some kind of a learning disability. I don't know that it was a general choice. So our options were private school or public school. However, one thing you have to know about me is that I do have a teaching credential. Now, don't let that scare you off. Those of you that don't have teaching credentials,
Yes, right.
I do not at all believe that it's a requirement. That just happens to be me. So it was a natural fit for me. Now, I did read a book that was very inspiring. I'm sorry I cannot remember what the book was, but as for the things that inspired me and shaped, I should say, what we did, there are three sources that I relied on a lot. The first was The Lost Tools of Learning by Dorothy Sayers. This is an essay, and it is available on Amazon in a small paperback. In it, she describes 3 stages of child development that have to do with education, and they have to do with how a child learns at those 3 stages. So knowing that gives you an immediate structure for how and why you're going to do certain things at different ages. I won't go into any more details. I'll let you look into that for yourself, but it really is very enlightening. The second thing that had a big influence on me was a book called The 3 R's by Ruth Beechick. Ruth Beechick is a former classroom teacher, and one of her emphases is that the homeschool does not have to be the classroom.
Love it.
So relax and learn from this experienced educator. Her approach is practical and down to earth and so doable. And you'll just sigh a sigh of relief when after you read this and realize how doable it really is.
And it's not an overwhelming book either. It's about a half an inch, less than an inch.
Yep.
Which, if you know me at all, I don't read more than an inch.
Great recommendation. Appreciate that. And then the second book that was very helpful to me, The Well-Trained Mind. And I relied on that book for ideas for how to structure individual subjects. I realized early on that what I need going year to year was a structure of how to approach history, science, because I wasn't going to have a curriculum the way I would have for English and arithmetic and so on. So I needed a structure. This book gave me that. This book also gave me outstanding reviews of materials, so that when I went to those overwhelming book fairs and looked at, saw hundreds of vendors and didn't know where to begin, this book gave me a start. I could pick 2 or 3 that she reviewed highly. I could look at them and make my choice. So those are the 3 main influences on my thinking and approach to homeschooling. And then as far as our main activities outside the home, our kids were involved in sports. We had horses, and our 2 daughters took horseback riding lessons. All 3 of our kids had music lessons, and they are now at the ages of 34, 32, and 26, and that's 2 girls and a boy. They all went to grad school, and they all are working in professions related to what they went to grad school for.
It seems like they have passion jobs, like jobs they feel passionate about.
Oh, definitely. Definitely, yes. So being homeschooled was never a deterrent or anything that held them back. Sure. That's my only reason for mentioning grad school. They went as far in schooling as they chose to do, and they were not held back, and there was no problem with them getting into college.
Yeah.
I think that's really encouraging to hear for a lot of the parents who don't know what higher education looks like when they homeschool. They come into it not knowing, and they get nervous, and they think they're going to send their kids back to public school and high school because they don't see another way.
No, I understand that fear. There is one crucial element, however, that you do need for college entrance, and that will be a high school transcript that you create either yourself or with the help of an umbrella organization that does it for you.
Yes,
definitely.
So did you offer your children a choice at all at any point?
At high school.
Oh, okay.
At the entrance to high school, I did ask our first if she...
That's a scary question.
It is. It is. And her response was, "So do you mean you wouldn't be my teacher?"
Oh.
I said, "That's right. You would have other teachers." And she said no.
Oh,
that's really
precious. Now that so your children are grown, do they look back and say, "I'm glad I was homeschooled," or would they say, "I wish I had gone the traditional route"?
One has said he was glad he was homeschooled. The other 2, the daughters, haven't said that in so many words, but neither have they complained or griped about it, or said, "Boy, if I had gone to a regular school, I could have done so-and-so."
Right.
No,
Yeah.
nothing like that at all.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nothing.
Yeah. All right. So as a homeschooling family, what was your role in the family? And then what was your husband's role? And I'll just, your husband was a full-time working professor at the seminary where actually my husband went. So I know he had a full-time job.
He did.
So what were your different roles in the education?
Okay. I was the main teacher, and I took that on willingly and joyfully. My husband did teach Greek to one of our kids. And then as to how things changed, I've mentioned Palomar, that we did make use of Palomar classes at the high school level, and also made use of organized sports at the high school level.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and then you've mentioned a bit of your homeschooling philosophy, especially with Well-Trained Mind, that tends to be possibly a classical education. Yes, no, or do you have a foundational philosophy that you subscribe to, or you just went off this framework and that was it?
Yeah, I'd say that's more accurate. The last that you said, I went off a framework.
Yeah.
Especially with the Sayers article and the three ways that kids approach learning depending on their age. That was just so helpful, understanding just the fact that the way kids learn changes as their brains change, and you have to account for that. Now, the book Well-Trained Mind, I have to say something now about classical education because it does say a guide to classical education on the cover. Classical education is one of those phrases that can mean something different to everyone who uses the phrase. For some, it means simply the addition of Latin.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
For others, it means something like the Sayers division of how kids learn. I mean, that would be considered classical as well. So I didn't really think of myself as using the classical method or approach because of that.
Yeah. All right. And then what did you enjoy most about homeschooling? Why did you choose to continue homeschooling? What brought you joy?
Right.
All those wonderful things.
Another early exposure of mine to the whole task of learning, and since I told you that I have the credential, you can conclude, and you'd be correct, that my bachelor's degree is in education. So I was, as a college student, was already reading books about education. And one that influenced me was a book by John Holt. He's going to come up later in our discussion of the history of homeschooling. And his book, he has a number of books, but one that influenced me was How Children Learn.
Yes.
So fun to read. So fun. And now I have a grandchild who's approaching 1. And I'm just reliving it. And I'm just having so much fun watching the new things he does week by week and month by month. So kids are born with this desire and enjoyment in learning and exploring. What happens? What goes wrong? Why do you then get the 7th grader who's down in the mouth, doesn't like school, drags his feet to do his homework? What went wrong? Where did that enjoyment of learning go? I won't get into all the details of my theory, but it's lost in a classroom.
Yes.
There's so much dead time. That's just one of other reasons. So that was one of my main purposes. I want them to enjoy learning.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Because I still enjoy learning.
Absolutely.
Why can I not bring up our kids in such a way that they can have this same joy and have it throughout their lives? And this is where I want to say to the moms who don't have teaching credentials, keep being a learner yourself. Because if you are learning, you will understand what your kids are going through. It'll help you to relate to them as they struggle with learning, as they will do with things that are hard. But it also means you don't have to worry about that you have to know everything ahead of time. Just enjoy it yourself. Learn with them. So that was one of my main motivators. The second one is that I believe that by homeschooling, which is an efficient way to teach, in other words, it doesn't take all day, it doesn't take 6 hours a day, you're giving them also a childhood.
Yes.
They're not just getting an education, they're getting a childhood. And you'll hear more about that when we talk about our daily schedule.
I love that.
One more thing.
I love it. Keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So one thing that was especially fun for our family was what we called our history co-op. We met together with 5 or so other families where we studied the same topic in history. We met either twice a month or once a month. We all came in costume for the era. We brought period food. Some of the moms put on a skit to introduce the era.
So cute. Oh my
Sometimes
goodness.
the kids participated in the reenactment, like if it was a war. Of course, there was reenactment.
They couldn't help
Are you
themselves.
kidding?
Youngest, especially. Yeah.
That's right. Oh, it was so much fun. And then the kids actually learned something. And they got to do reports to an audience.
Yes.
And then one of the moms was a great photographer, and we all left after umpteen years of doing this with photo albums of all these experiences.
That's amazing.
Cool.
So it was a lot of fun. That was one of our highlights.
Did you have one leader of the group, or did you guys just rotate?
No, we were all leaders.
Yeah.
So we would meet in August, plan the year, plan the 10 or so history topics, and assign one another duties for each topic.
Oh.
So who was going to introduce the topic, who was going to do a drama, who was going to plan the food and give assignments, that kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
So we shared it all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a
we
great
shared it all.
breakdown of tasks.
Definitely. Definitely.
And we have benefited from your hand-me-down costumes.
That's right.
My
That's
girls
right.
had so much fun trying all those on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
okay. So what does a typical homeschool day look like for you? And it may be different depending on their
Yes.
grade levels. So,
Yes, it would have been, and it also would have been different depending on whether or not it was a co-op day. It was if it was a co-op day, we got dressed and we were out the door, and the whole day was spent, like from 9 in the morning until 5 or 6 in the evening.
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But entirely worth it. But a typical day, the schedule would have been something like this: school in the morning hours. I taught my kids from early on that they were to get dressed, make their beds, and come out to the kitchen table for breakfast. And schoolwork began right after breakfast at the kitchen table. We didn't even get up. We just went right to Bible.
Oh, cool.
By not allowing them to get involved in some play activity, I've never had a problem corralling them for lessons. They come automatically because they're hungry.
Yeah.
And then we just start. And don't think that you're depriving a younger child that you're keeping at the table while you teach the older child something more advanced. Think of it like this. The younger child is getting to audit
Yeah.
3rd grade.
And they get to be there bonding,
Yeah.
and that's
Oh,
what children
yes.
need so much.
Oh,
They
yes.
don't want to be alone playing by themselves.
Oh, of course not. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then you'll have the younger children, as what happened with us, asking, "Mommy, I want to read,
Right.
like my sister does.
Yes.
Please, will you teach me to read?"
Yeah.
Oh,
I love the
natural.
audit analogy.
It's perfect.
I audited 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade.
I only have the 2 kids, and they're 6 years apart, and that's how it feels because my littlest
Sure.
is 4. So he loves to sit with us. That was a big change this school year for us.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he'll sit there, and I love it. He's excited to do his oceans lesson for the day, and he's hopping around the whole time, but he's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, okay, hopping around. I'll come back to that one too. Vocabulary.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's picking up vocabulary and other general knowledge.
Yes.
Is such an important part of being educated, of being an
Absolutely.
educated person. And it contributes to comprehension in reading.
Yes.
If a child has a good vocabulary and pretty good general knowledge, then when he encounters such words and ideas in a book, it's not going to be a problem to learn to read those words.
Right.
Exactly. There's familiarity.
Yes. But if he doesn't have it, he's going to really struggle with those words. And guess what the public school then will do in response to that? Because I've been working as a substitute teacher in our public school district for the past 4 years. And this is what I see. They're trying to teach comprehension
Oh, yeah.
directly
Yeah.
Right.
to first graders. But it can't be done because they don't know anything yet.
Yeah.
Right.
They haven't experienced
Right.
the experiences they're supposed to be
That's
comprehending.
right. That's right. And so, highlighter in hand, they're given a text and they're told, highlight the main idea.
Oh.
Are you kidding? An 8-year-old?
Yeah.
So what I was seeing, they highlight everything.
Right. Everything.
They
is
can't-
important. They don't know.
They don't know. They
Yeah.
can't distinguish yet. Their brains aren't ready for it, getting back to Dorothy's hairs. And they don't have the background knowledge for it.
Right.
Doesn't make sense. But that's what's happening. So, having your younger ones audit, bonus,
It is.
Yeah.
bonus,
Yeah.
all around.
Yeah. Okay, so How did you find community? We've already heard about the history co-op. That sounds amazing.
Yes.
How did you even find those people? And then also any other communities you were involved in?
Found the people because one of the moms was in our church. We were in church together.
Oh, okay.
And was at her house visiting with her. And she mentioned that one of the families in the co-op, she had already been doing it. One of the families was leaving, and they were looking for a family to fill their place. And I said, I'll do it.
Me, please.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as other opportunities for community, there was the Park Day, the weekly Escondido homeschool group Park Day.
How would you find out about that?
I'm blanking on the name. That may not have been the name, but they met at Kit Carson Park every Friday.
Oh, and you just happened upon them? Like how, because you didn't have Facebook and you know, now there's these Facebook groups that say, oh, meet in San Marcos or meet in Carlsbad.
Yes.
But you didn't have
Right.
that.
No, we didn't. So it would have been word of mouth, probably
Okay.
through this same friend in my church.
Wow. It was so much harder than to figure all this out. You couldn't just go on a Facebook page and see what all the curriculum people are
But
trying.
it is really nice and personal
Yeah.
in
It
that
is.
regard.
Yeah.
You know,
It is.
it's hard
That's
to break in sometimes, even though you know where to go and where to show up.
Yeah.
These are virtual people. There's
true.
a little bit of
Good.
both.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. It's, you think it's easy because that's your ordinary way of operating.
Yeah.
But when it's word of mouth and that's your ordinary way, it's just as easy.
That's true. Yeah, good point. Now we're on to our next section of questions, advice for homeschoolers. So yes, everyone's homeschooling journey is personal for them and their family, but there's some general advice, right? Some general advice or some ideas that an experienced homeschooler can give to people like us, to new homeschoolers, or people even considering homeschooling. So what's one thing you feel like a person should learn before adulthood? Like what's something that you focused on?
Okay. Well, let me revise the question just a little bit.
Okay.
That a person needs to learn in order to be a well-functioning adult. And that would be that they need to know how to do their laundry.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Check.
Do not omit teaching them how to do their laundry. And believe me, as soon as you can, turn it over to them.
Yes. It's a daily grind.
Right. Okay, but joking aside, yes, there is something, and I think in this day and age, it's critical thinking. I don't need to tell you about things that are in the news that are, well, for an overused word, disinformation, misinformation. The news outlets are not reliable. And of course, the question of, what, even before they were this unreliable, there was always the question of what they were selecting to show to you as the news. It takes a lot of discernment to be a responsible adult in our democratic society and grow up to be a responsible voter, a responsible citizen. Critical thinking. We teach it as a subject initially so that they learn, for instance, what logical fallacies are.
Exactly. Yeah.
The bandwagon. Oh, everybody thinks this.
Right.
Poll after poll. Well, that's a logical fallacy. That does not prove anything. So this is where you're going with this. You teach it directly first as a subject. Now, when do you teach it? You teach it beginning in about 7th grade. And again, getting back to Dorothy Sayers and the Lost Tools of Learning, that's called the logic stage. It's because kids at that age love logic. They love formulating an argument. They love debating. It's the perfect age to begin speech and debate club and, expose them to the news and start looking for fallacies. You are developing their critical thinking by doing that. And then once they have a good handle on those things, then you apply it in other subjects. So if you're reading a textbook or a library book or something online, you're going to be expecting them to analyze it with their critical thinking knowledge.
That's awesome. I love it. You were just talking about doing that.
Oh, I bought the program. My husband and I were excited about it. I think criticalthinking.org is the organization, and we have a huge poster now of the logical fallacies.
Excellent.
And we have it on hand. Oh, and it came with a deck of cards.
Nice.
So that we can just go through the cards at the table. But my daughter is only 10. We're finishing up 4th grade. And so my husband and I are just going through it right now together.
Yep.
But those are the opportunities we foresee. I want to be able to do exactly what you said, to watch the news together and point it out. And my husband already does with her. I love it. And I think it's the most critical thing we can teach our kids is to be able to discern when they're out in the real world.
That's right. Discernment.
I feel very passionate about it right now.
I know. I love it.
But I do.
That's great.
That's
great.
Yeah. I don't want my daughter to be gaslighted and have no idea and think she, that's not okay.
Yeah.
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So what is one thing or more that you're super glad that you did or used or experienced?
Well, hands down, it would have to be the history co-op
Yes.
that I've already described.
Yeah.
If you can do such a thing, and it wouldn't even have to be history, it could be another subject. I was thinking, Mandy and I were talking about the dead bird on her doorstep just before this interview. And it occurred to me, a science co-op would have been so fun.
Yeah,
Right?
We've been talking about that.
Yeah.
So, any subject. It could be a writing co-op. If you have students who are interested in writing, we had one who wrote a short novel. A writing co-op would be fantastic where they share their fiction writing with one another and they read fiction together and then discuss it. I mean, there are just so many options for this.
There's not enough years.
No, there's not.
Well, you have to have the breakouts. We have a 13 family
okay.
co-op that's not subject based.
Okay.
So we pick different themes and
Okay.
it's wonderful. We talk a lot about it on the podcast, so our listeners are familiar. But it would just be great to have these little clubs, and we can pull from this co-op, these groups of kids who are already intimate with each other.
There you go.
And the moms who know each other, and then being able to do the writing club or the science, that one's definitely at the top of our list because you don't have to be studying the same curriculum to be able to go to a science meetup once a month, once a week, whatever you choose. The experience that day that you meet up could be what they learn together.
Right.
So there's a lot of opportunity, so we definitely keep thinking about the different ways we want to use our co-op to benefit our kids. And the
That's
history
great.
one is amazing. I love that idea.
I know.
I did the missions this year because I did California history with my kid, and a lot of our students were doing similar studies. And so I planned the missions. We went to the mining company, and the kids had a whole gold rush.
Julian.
Yeah.
Nice. Yes.
So it was just really neat to do those
Fantastic.
things. And so I can see how a few years of a history co-op could be just incredible.
You say on the one hand, there's not enough years.
Yeah.
But just so that anyone new to homeschooling doesn't get the wrong idea, there's plenty of time for your kids at home to learn all that they need to learn before they leave high school.
Yeah.
So if you feel like at the very early grades a child is kind of behind, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Right.
There's plenty of time for
Yeah.
them to learn.
The not
everything.
enough years means there's so many fun things to do.
Experiences.
Yeah. This is the teacher talking.
Mandy is experience oriented
Yeah,
and adventure oriented, and there's just not enough time to do all the amazing adventures Mandy wants.
Yeah.
This is right. Yes, this is true.
My FOMO is kicking in. Okay, and then is there any regrets that you have with regards to homeschooling or anything you would have done differently?
Yes. I would have done speech and debate.
Oh.
I'll mention that one first since we were just talking about critical thinking. Another one would have been a bigger friend group for our kids. We had a small group of friends that we saw regularly. I think they would have benefited from more variety and just
more
Just a bigger
people to
group.
choose from.
more people to choose from, more people to get together with when maybe the favorites weren't available. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, to
Would
develop
have been.
the second team.
There you go. Right. Yeah. Good. I like that. And then also being more aware of their personalities as it affected their learning. Now, I was aware of some of that, and I did allow for some of it, but I could have done more in that area.
I think that's so hard because we're in the trenches. When we're just trying to teach material. We're trying to bond with our kids. We're trying to keep the house clean. And so in the midst of all that, someone and then I don't want to miss out on the fun or go out with friends. And so it's hard not to just skim over that.
Yeah. No, this is true. Homeschooling is a juggling act. Yeah, no doubt about it. You can allow for things, though, and I'll just mention one. After having 2 girls, then we went on to have a son, and he was definitely different in a wonderful way. And because of his higher energy level, I realized, it's okay if he stands up at the desk and does his writing or his arithmetic.
Yeah.
This is not about learning to sit in a chair.
No.
This is about, and here's Ruth Beachick talking, your homeschool does not have to be a classroom. This is not about learning to sit in the chair. This is about learning the material. If he needs to jump rope while reciting his math facts, great.
Yes.
Get him a jump rope. Let him stand up at the desk. Not a problem. Let him take a 5-minute walk break around the house or the yard between subjects. Not a problem. You can accommodate for things like that, and you're not going to ruin his education.
No. They will eventually learn to sit still.
They will.
Eventually.
When they need
or
to.
they'll take a class that they've been so excited to take, and that 1-hour class will require them to sit and pay attention.
Yeah.
That's right.
We have giant exercise balls.
Yes.
And so the girls especially will roll theirs in, move the chair, and they'll sit at the table and they'll just bounce the whole time.
Yes.
They love
great.
it. Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. I wish I'd had one for my son.
I know.
But we made it work.
Yeah. So what would be your advice to those considering homeschooling or new to homeschooling?
I have 3 suggestions. First of all, read a book. I recommend read The 3 R's by Ruth Beachick, because as a reliable source has pointed out, it is very short. It's only a half an inch. You can do this.
That was the first one I read. You gifted me that. Yeah.
I gift it to anyone I know who's considering homeschooling. You'll see the doableness of it through her book. Another option would be to visit a friend's homeschool. Ask for permission and say, I just want to be a fly in the wall. I just want to sit here quietly and watch and think, can I do this? And then thirdly, give it a try, but give yourself a time limit. We'll try it for 6 months. We'll try it until the Christmas break. We'll try it until the spring break, something like that. Then you know that if it's not working well, there's an end to it, and you just have to get to the end.
I love it.
Yes.
And then how about those struggling with homeschooling?
Yeah. First of all, let me assure you, I'm not one of those that thinks that homeschooling is for everyone. It's not. Not everyone will be drawn to it. So if you are not drawn to it, but for some reason you feel some pressure from family or friends, whomever, you don't have to give in. It's not for everyone. Don't be afraid or ashamed to admit that it's not for you. If you've already started and you're discovering this is really not for me, don't be ashamed of that. It's okay. But what you should do, if you are already started, is at least get your kids to one of the breaks in the ordinary school year, so that if they are going to go back into the classroom somewhere, that it's done after a break. That'll be a little bit easier for them. But if you're doing it, you're committed to it, but you're just struggling a little bit, one thing you could try would be ask a friend, especially someone who's homeschooled for longer than you. Ask them to come to your homeschool.
Oh, great
and
idea.
be a fly on the wall, and then give you some feedback. And they might be able to point out some areas where you could either cut away or do things more efficiently that would relieve some of the stress on you.
I love that. That's the personal consulting that we all need. And it helps when you have a community about you, because as you're talking with other moms who are homeschooling, they can say, oh, well, have you considered this, or have you tried this?
There you go.
But if you don't have that community, it's hard to know that. It's hard.
True.
So it's great if you can find one person to do that for you. I love it.
Well, and that brings up, Mandy, just that importance of the community. If you're going on this, if you're homeschooling rather alone and you're not ever meeting with other homeschoolers, that would definitely be something I would change.
Yes.
Find that support.
Yeah.
Perhaps you're trying to do too much if you're struggling. How about cutting out some extracurricular activities? Are you running yourself ragged? Are you running your kids ragged? Do they really need all that? Why can't they just play for a few hours in the afternoon? You know, back when we talked about my schedule, I forgot to mention that after school lessons in the morning, my kids played in the afternoon.
They could jump in the composting pile if they wanted to.
Right.
We had
a big garden. Yeah. It's true. Or they could jump on the fallen tree.
Oh, perfect.
Which acted like a trampoline.
But I think you make a good point. You didn't school all day and then go to your extracurriculars directly. There was breath and space in your day.
Oh yeah. Kids still need their childhood. The work of childhood is play.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
They learn from that, and they mature and they develop and they have important experiences like problem solving. They need to play.
Yeah, you had a wonderful like fort tree house.
Yeah. Yeah, we had and then there was a play kitchen.
Yeah.
Where bark off of a tree was your steak when you came to their restaurant for dinner. Imaginative play. Yeah, so important. You could even cut back for time on subjects taught. If you struggle to get through reading, writing, and arithmetic, then scale back on history and science. It's okay. There are plenty of years to learn all that they need to learn in those areas. Focus on the essentials for a 13-week period, for instance, and then reevaluate.
Yeah.
So those are my suggestions.
Great suggestions.
Thank you.
I should be taking notes.
We're going to be listening to
But
this.
you have a recording. You're just going to listen to it over and over.
Actually, I do that with our podcast. I have to say.
That's great. You're so funny.
All right, we're now to the last section of our questions. Your historical knowledge of homeschooling in the time frame that you were homeschooling. So, what was it like homeschooling in the 90s and the 2000s, and what do you think has changed since then, if it has, and what's different or what's the same?
I've already mentioned the author John Holt. He was my exposure to early homeschoolers. If I'm not mistaken, he was associated with what is known as the unschooling approach.
Yeah, it's attributed to him.
Okay. Well, I was attracted to that at first. I thought, whoa, what freedom, what spontaneity. Then I had kids. And I learned the truth of human nature. And if it's child-led, which I believe is the premise of homeschooling, of unschooling, excuse me, thank you, then he's going to only pick what he likes. So he may miss out on some really fun science stuff, some very important history stuff. So it has weaknesses. But I was of that generation that was doing homeschooling more traditionally and over against the unschooling approach. So we were okay with, there's definitely information that shouldn't be missed, that we need to relay to our kids. There are definitely skills that we need to teach them. We can't let this be child-led entirely. So that was where I fit in with what had come before. Now, what I get asked most often now by homeschoolers of your generation is, however did you homeschool without the internet?
Oh, I know.
And if that's what you're thinking, listener, please take a trip to a library.
It's just so easy to pull up a YouTube of a video of something, you know?
So much more, you're teaching your kids so much more than just that data.
Yes.
By taking them to a library, having them search for books, having them bring home 3 books on a subject, skim, scan, and studying them, getting an overview of a topic. And kids' books, I still read kids' books. If I'm new to a subject area, they're perfect for getting grips on something that's new to you. Please work library visits into your homeschool.
I love that. And you only lived about 5 minutes from the library.
It's true, but don't let that stop you.
Right. Yeah. But how convenient. I think that's a really
very.
great, your location, what is around your location can really, if it's a really cool playground, then utilize that playground too.
Oh,
because
definitely.
the playgrounds are so great for their development.
Yes, very true. I once read a biography of someone who had become a doctor later in life, and he spent his afternoons after school with his mother, who just took him to the zoo every afternoon.
Wow.
Amazing.
This was in New York City, Lincoln Zoo.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, but I love the library. You go to the library a ton.
We try to go at least a couple times a month. So if there's a gap between events, we go. My son goes for the computer for a portion of time.
Yeah.
And then I redirect him. But he's 4. My daughter, she's scouring the shelves.
Yeah, my kids love looking. They are always looking for the newest Piggy and Elephant book or Elephant and Piggy book. That anything in a series, they're like, oh, there's a new one.
Yeah. Right. And there's a point where the internet provides you so much that you can't parse through it.
Yes.
So when I was preparing our California unit study, I went to that section in the library. Yeah. And I was like, a book on the Liseños. That's what I want, which I wasn't finding when I was looking at recommendations on the internet because they were showing me the more popular tribes of California. I wanted local, and guess where they were?
Course.
In my local library. So for me, that was a huge benefit. And so that was a great part of my summer last year, was going to the library and noting the books that I either wanted to purchase because I saw them at the library and wanted to just keep them in our reference books, or be able to check out when the time came to use them. So I do love that recommendation. And I do think that it's a lost art to use it for reference.
Yeah.
And Mandy and I have talked about this. I've built our own personal reference library because I still truly want to send my kids to books to find information.
Yes.
But the library, I need them to know how to do that too.
Yes.
know? So,
Right.
So I agree. I love that suggestion for sure.
And also what you're doing is contributing to their acquiring that general knowledge that I was talking about earlier. And another way you can do that is with magazines. I would subscribe to magazines for my kids, and that was their part of their fun reading. They enjoyed it, and they learned a lot. And I was astounded when our daughter told me something I didn't know about snakes, that they have a jointed jaw, and that's why it can open so wide to swallow rodents. She knew that because she would sit and read through a child's encyclopedia.
Right.
Oh.
General knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes. My daughter knows almost everything about tarantulas.
There you go.
Because we gave her a reference book and said, we want you to give us a report on what you know about tarantula care.
Perfect.
And then we will take you and go get your tarantula. But she read it cover to cover.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
way above and beyond what we expected. But the things that she can come up with about tarantulas and that she recalls, oh no, we can't feed it this type of insect because it's dangerous. And, okay. You know, and we can trust her that she knows that. And now she knows how to find out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Ruth Beechick refers to this. I'm not sure what her phrase for it is, but in the subject area of teaching reading, you do want to encourage your kids to read deeply in areas of their interest. Mm-hmm. Because, as you mentioned, not only does it build their knowledge, but it builds their skill in finding knowledge and using knowledge.
Right, because they have that interest in it. And I think that's a principle that does come from that unschooling idea that I think a lot of us who have the passion for the learning and the general knowledge, I think that's really where we can pull from that as our kids get older, is to have time for them to pursue that. And to find their own interest-led subject matter. And,
yes, definitely.
While we still want to put stuff in front of them, they should still have time to do that.
They should still have time to do that, definitely. At the high school level, we call that electives.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right.
Why can't fifth graders have electives?
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly. Oh. You're so fun, Kathy.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about what we have now. Do you feel like we were lacking anything now that you had back then, other than like an appreciation for the library? A lot of that's going away. Or on the flip side, anything you wish you had that now back then that we have now?
Yeah, I really could not think of anything. That's not because there isn't something, but I just didn't think of it.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, so just kind of a quick summary for favorite resources. It's the Lost Tools of Learning.
Correct.
The 3 R's and the Well-Trained Mind.
That's right.
I love it. I already know about 2 of those. I don't know the Lost Tools of Learning. Do you know about the Lost Tools of Learning?
No, but now I
have to
thinking of adding it to my list.
I know. Yeah. So, Kathy, this has been awesome. I loved hearing about your journey. I wish I would have interviewed you 10 years ago before I even started, Yeah, so I know this is going to be so helpful to people, and we just really appreciate you spending the time with us here.
I'm so happy to do it. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me. And yes, that's my one and only wish, is that it's helpful.
Yes. So that was our interview with Kathy. Wasn't that such an awesome interview?
It was really amazing. I have to say, even though I'm 6 years into homeschooling and I feel confident at a lot of what I do, there's just something so inspiring about listening to a mom whose children are grown, who's been through the same struggles, who's been through the challenges, but who's on the other side and can just tell me, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right track. And just the wealth of knowledge and the encouragement. There's just so much encouragement in what she offered us, and we're able to send that to you and share it.
The long-term perspective is something that we lack a lot in this world. And I don't think we tap into the veteran teachers or homeschoolers or whoever in whatever fields enough.
Absolutely.
And I loved what she said about the homeschool co-op.
Yes.
That the history co-op, that sounds so much fun.
It has me re-inspired for all the things our own co-op can do next year, or consider at least.
And it totally reaffirmed the logical fallacies. Am I saying that right?
You mean the critical thinking?
The critical thinking. It totally reaffirmed that. I mean,
did you see my excitement over that?
I know.
I was so into it because we were just talking about that.
Yeah, we were talking about reading the book Raising Critical Thinkers by Julie Bogart.
Yeah.
And I have the fallacy book here. I have the Tuttle Twins here. I have all that here because I know that's important in today's world, especially.
And just that affirmation is just always so helpful, I think, to everybody. But I just really appreciate that I don't know everything. And I love when there's somebody who's got more knowledge and wisdom than I do that can share that with me. And that's personable. You know, I can read it in a book, but there's something about having somebody in your life that you know that can share that with you.
Yeah, and then the advice about what to do when you're struggling, whether
Yes.
it's dropping a subject or dropping extracurriculars or having someone come and check out your homeschooling and see if there's a reworking that would make a huge difference.
Exactly.
That was really cool.
I loved it.
Me too. Okay, so now it's time for
Game schooling.
So this is where we recommend a game.
Yes.
So in light of the history co-op that Kathy mentioned, and also in light of her saying how important it is to expose our children to words before expecting comprehension, I want to plug the game Ticket to Ride.
Yes.
Now, I have mentioned this game before.
It's a favorite of yours.
Yeah, it's one of them, but there's some caveats to that.
Right.
But Ticket to Ride is a cross-country or cross-continent train adventure where players collect cards of various types of train cards that enable them to claim railway routes connecting cities in various countries around the world. There's a ton of strategy and planning, and it's pretty competitive. So in the American version, you get a game card that says you need to get the route from New Orleans to Seattle, or from Dallas to Boston. So if you're studying American history, it's a great way to acclimate your children to the names of states and cities in the United States.
Right. And I presume the game board is a map?
It's a map. Yeah.
So then you have that visual geographical context too.
Yeah, and you can talk about East and West Coast. You can talk about what continent it's on.
Right.
And you can just give them a frame of reference. Then you can find it on a globe and see what oceans are the boundaries for it.
Right.
And that's just for American history. If you're doing European history, here's the versions they have. Okay.
Yes.
Europe, Nordic countries, Asia, Germany, Heart of Africa, Indian, Netherlands, San Francisco.
Oh,
I know.
yeah. That makes sense. There's a lot of trains there.
Yeah, and a younger child version.
Okay.
And so if you're spending time doing a unit study or studying world history, this can be a really great game to acclimate your child to the names and places they are studying. It can also show you how cities and states or countries are connected. And it's important to see where the oceans are. So if there's an ocean separating countries, it's harder to go to war.
Right.
But if countries are right next door, you can see why certain countries would invade other countries because they're right next door.
Right in. Yeah.
Right. And so it just kind of helps you understand that, because if you look up any YouTube on the history of a country, most of it's about war. And then there'll be some trade routes.
Right.
And so this will really familiarize them with the globe, with the map that they need to use to understand history a little bit better.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's a long game, and it's 1 to 1.5 hours, and it's just one round. It's not like you can do one round and then stop. You
have to,
you don't want to stop mid-game. There's no point to playing the game. And it's fun for ages 7+, but I think the people who probably get the most out of it are teens and adults.
Got it.
But my son, who's 12, loves that game.
Yeah.
And there's a long setup, and you can't just throw the game out and say, hey, let's play Ticket to Ride.
Right.
But there's a lot of strategy and planning, and I get really stressed during it because someone could block my path, and then I won't reach my destination.
Right. And it's going to ruin your whole play. Yeah.
So there's some, I'm going to be studying world history this year. So I could get the European or India. I'm not going to get 4 tickets to ride.
No.
Right? So you know of some games that would be really helpful for all different types of history.
Exactly. So I had some on my list for my study, and then I was doing some research on the top recommended games for history, and I found these for you and set these aside for you. So ancient history, there's a game called Hunters and Gatherers. There's Tigris and Euphrates.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah, I think Tigris and Euphrates, it's a lot like Settlers of Catan. I think you're trying to make settlements along the Tigris and Euphrates. There's Kings of Israel board game. And then there's a History of the World game. Yeah. And then if you're looking for something a little bit different or more specific, there's the Middle Ages, Conquest of the Empire, and then the card game Dominion. I know that that's pretty popular. So I feel like some of our friends play that often because they've heard of it.
Yeah.
Renaissance time period, there's the Princes of Florence and the Fresco board game where you're an Italian painter.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And then American history. So these are the ones that are on my list for our unit study next year or this school year is Oregon Trail, Constitution Quest, and Timeline American History.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, a way to check these games out is you can go onto YouTube and search for that game, and there's usually a YouTube showing you how it's played.
For sure.
And that'll help you see is this a game that your child or you would appreciate, because you want both of you to be interested in it. You want to enjoy game schooling with your child. And then another way is, I know at the Great Homeschool Convention that I went to last year, in the exhibit hall, there was a whole huge booth. They probably bought 2 or 3 booth sizes of all these games. And they even had them out that you could touch and feel. Yeah. And then they had some game tables set up where some of the teens were playing the games.
How cool.
Yeah. And then also our lending library for our school has a bunch of games, so we can always check things out ahead of time. Before buying them. So if you have a friend with them, sometimes it just helps to check them out before you actually invest in them.
Definitely.
Thanks for listening. We love your support. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave a rating and review to let us know how we're doing, and share our podcast with your friends who need a little community, humility, and joyful fun in homeschooling.